the hell exactly was Nick Sirianni doing yesterday? Now listen, Eagles won the game. And there's so many things I would love to talk about today, all right? So many things. Jalen Hurts is fully in his bag. Devontae Smith, we heard from everybody that we have on, whether it's our own Andrew DeCecco, whether it was Dave Zangaro, whether it was Tim McManus, about how Devontae was having this great training camp, and it was going to show that he was going to take his game to another level. How about the linebacker play? All right? And then, not to mention, Saquon Barkley. And instead of, I got to talk about this damn head coach again because he refuses to stay out of the way. There is no difference between 17 and 18. He's acting like there's a difference. It's 3 scores either way, Nick. Why do you keep taking points off the board? Why, Nick? You have a routine game. Even if you believe in everything that you did, why'd you have to do it when you're blowing a team out at home? Save some of that powder for the good teams. Do that against Washington, although don't do it against Washington. Why do I keep on week after week having to be worried about Nick Sirianni's decisions? I want to talk about the football game. After the Browns game, we all got to talk about how he was yelling at some fan. And then people go, see, it was overblown. Somebody on Reddit wrote something. Yeah, we know the guy didn't just say run the ball, but you can't respond, Nick. Then you fast forward to this game. I guess he got bored because the game was going too easy. They scored it all 4 quarters. They scored in the first quarter. So now that can stop being talked about. And everything is just going too smooth. And then he's got to throw a grenade in it and mess it up. Why does he have to make these decisions? I don't want to talk about him anymore, okay? Do you ever get tired of talking about somebody? But he's the head coach of the football team. And yes, in previous weeks recently, he's done a good job. That doesn't mean he did a good job in this game. Ricky, when you're watching the game, why does Nick Sirianni keep on making these weird decisions?
Because his analytics suck. If you remember the last time he told us, it was earlier in the season. He said, well, my analytics tell me something different. I think he thinks when you miss a 2-point conversion, you got to get four points somewhere down the line. Instead of looking up at the scoreboard and saying, all right, I put one more point on here, we're up 3 scores. Instead, let's go for 2 to make it 18 instead of 17. This guy's out of his mind. I don't know where else you want to go with this, with the exception is that he's craving more and more points, and it doesn't work like that in football all the time. Yes, you know what this goes back to? That first year he was coaching here where every 4th down was a first down for the Eagles. And I really believe that he thinks that kind of luck keeps carrying forward every single year. Well, right now, that luck is kicking him in the ass all the time. And I just, you know what? Okay, the tush-push doesn't work once. You keep trying it. It's not going to fail every time. That's one thing. Okay? It didn't work that one time. Then they go to a pass off it. They try different things off it. All right, that's fine. You have a running back behind you that could run the football too. There's so many weird decisions that this guy makes. I thought the dumbest of all dumb was you're at the 39-yard line at the end of the ball game, 4th down and 3, I believe it was, manageable. You don't get it. At least it's a long field. Instead, he decides to kick a 57-yard field goal at that point. Where are these analytics coming from?
He did the same thing in the Saints game, where he passed up field goals early and then kicks the long one and gives the other team a short field.
This guy is consistently and constantly taking points off the board. You know what? 1, 2, 3, 4 points in a game? That could mean it could have meant the game in this.
If they kicked one of the field goals, they're driving down, it's 31-23, for example. And then the worst-case scenario is a tie. Instead, Nakobe Dean's got to make a play to win the game. He keeps making these decisions. So meanwhile, because I'm not even going to include it in our Popeyes plays of the game, Saquon Barkley's doing stuff like this.
Has time. Now locates Barkley out of the backfield. Barkley slips 2 tackles and picks up the first down, jumping up in the air to the 30. A gain of 14 for Barkley with some nifty moves along the way.
You see the giggle that Tiki Barber had when he saw that? You hear the giggling in the background, right? And today, because we have to do our jobs. We have to be responsible adults. We can't just talk about that. We got to talk about the head coach doing all he can to try to make them lose rather than win. Now, I know it's not on purpose, but these decisions by Nick Sirianni are big factors in the games. And this is what's killing me, is that, think about this now, 6-2. Now, we'll find out about A.J. Brown, but Dallas is going to be without their quarterback, okay? Now, it may not make a lick of difference. Dallas isn't that good this year, all right? But you got a situation where you can get to 7-2, and then you got Washington on the short week after that. So these are two big games, and we could be talking about that. But it's impossible to ignore these decisions over and over again by Nick Sirianni, and it's not that he always rolls snake eyes. It's that he's making decisions he doesn't need to make. That's the issue I have. He's making decisions that he doesn't need to make. You don't have to be involved in every single thing in the world. And now I believe because he's not calling plays anymore. And you see how the offense looks when he doesn't call plays? All the motion and all the different exotic things that we're seeing. And you see how Fangio now has the defense way tighter. Not perfect, but way tighter. He might be getting upset. He might be bored. So he's sitting there going, I don't know what to do. How do I put my imprint on the game? And it's to overcoach. Sometimes you just kick the field goal despite the analytics because you understand your opponent. You see, there was a number they could have gotten to. Now, arguably, you took 9 points off the board. Now, you don't kick a couple of field goals, you don't convert. Then the 2-point conversion, you start chasing the points. If they get to 37, Jacksonville can't get to 37. You see, they can't. Even with all they were doing, they weren't getting to 37. You don't need to use your analytics bag against every opponent. You don't have to coach every game like it's the Super Bowl. You can sometimes just do the traditional stuff because who are you facing? Now, when they play Washington on that Thursday night, maybe he needs to go for two a bunch of times, and maybe they're scoring enough where you go, you know what, I can't have field goals. Field goals are fine against Jacksonville. He's not making sound decisions because every game is not the same. Yes, you practice the same way. Yes, you want to play the same way. But there's certain times where you know. Let me tell you something. Ricky Bo comes in the game in a one-run game. Ricky Bo's got to pitch a certain way. If Ricky hasn't thrown in a while and he's got a 5-run lead and I see Ricky walk one person, I'm cursing Ricky out.
I'm cursing myself out.
What are you doing walking somebody up 5?
Yep.
Throw strikes. If he hits a solo home run, who cares? The situation doesn't call for you to be so extra fine. Versus in a one-run game,
right,
totally different deal. It's like Nick Sirianni didn't realize who he was coaching against.
I feel like I'm watching Kapler-Klentak.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't care. We've been through it. We saw it. We saw what a mess it could be at times. Yeah, it's all cute and dandy. You're adding all these unnecessary things into the game. That's what I feel like Nick is. Unnecessary things. Why? And you brought up the point. Maybe he just wants to make his mark on that game. It's like a dog going to a fire hydrant. Got to make your mark. Every time I go by it, got to make my mark. That's what I feel like Sirianni is. The dog going to the fire hydrant.
I just don't understand it. Like you guys, and I'm talking to everybody out there. We all felt comfortable, okay? The game wasn't perfect, but early in the game, as they're building their lead, you never thought Jacksonville had a chance early in that game. You never felt that, right? So just 3 is fine. When you're playing a team that might score 50 on you, I understand. In football, sometimes 3 absolutely will get you beat. This was not one of those games. It just wasn't one of those games.
Who is it? Kreskin, the one that could look ahead, thinks he could look ahead?
Yeah.
I feel like Sirianni thought this game was going to be like 50-0, and he was just going to screw around and run 2-point conversions all the time or go for it on every possibility. I don't understand. This is not one game. It's not one game. We're talking about it because, once again, we're back to certain things that happened last year. The team wins. You want to feel good about it, but there's always something holding you back. And Nick Sirianni is the one holding this one back. There was a lot of good stuff that happened in that football game yesterday. The defense, you brought that up. Saquon Barkley. Yeah, there were a lot of good things. But then you look at it and you say, well, it was the Jacksonville Jaguars. and Nick was trying to screw this game up. Every time he takes a point off the board, I get pissed.
And I hear you, and I think there will be times, because in the last couple weeks, we have praised Nick Sirianni when we think he does something well. We have, because if we see good, we're going to say good. But at the same time, yesterday was not a time to be doing all your analytics. I'm sorry. There's no book that says 17 to 18 are different when the other team has 0. When the other team has 0, you don't need to get to 18. Period. They have 0. 17 is fine when they have 0. It's like he just doesn't understand not why he's making the decisions. I'm sure he knows why. He doesn't realize that he doesn't need to make those decisions.
He gets ultra aggressive. I think he gets almost like a little cocky. And I wonder if almost like the moment of going up against Doug Peterson, the one who brought the Super Bowl to Philly finally, do you think that at all maybe had any chance of why he got ultra aggressive and maybe a little too cocky, wanting to score on them in all different ways?
He's beat him before.
I'm aware.
This isn't the first time they played Jacksonville. That shouldn't be in his mind.
When it's a shutout, you don't think he wanted to get extra aggressive and really...
He maybe, but he shouldn't. That's a sign of immaturity.
Well, I think we are well aware that he is immature.
It's a sign of immaturity. And I'm tired of talking about his decisions versus just talking about the game. But I got to tell you, when I'm out and about today, I stopped by. I went and got a Egg McMuffin with no meat, okay, this morning. Guess what I heard about the guys, you got to go to the first window.
Yep.
There was somebody there. Guess what they were talking about? I don't know what Nick Sirianni was thinking at the McDonald's. I go to get gas. What do I hear the gas attendant talking about this morning? I don't know what the heck that Sirianni guy was. It's like we're all being held hostage by Nick Sirianni.
I was at a party and immediately everyone was like, oh my gosh, like why is he doing this? What is he doing this for? It just immediately gets you irritated because it's like, what are you doing this for? They have 0 points.
They have 0
Why
points.
are we surprised?
It's not really about being surprised. It's because he has had weeks, and I'm trying to balance this in this way. I'm aware that he had a little streak there where he was pushing all the right buttons. It's not only that he pushed the wrong buttons yesterday, he was pushing buttons that don't need to be pushed. You know how sometimes a kid, Ricky, you know this, you have 2 daughters, where they get someplace and they just want to touch everything?
Yes.
And you got to tell them, like, it's not so much that, like, they're touching the it's like, don't touch anything.
Right.
That's kind of what Nick needed to do. Yesterday was a game where the team's inferior. You give them life by keeping them in it, by not having the mentality of do the simple stuff. A 30-some-yard field goal against them is fine. If you just put his 9 points that he took off the board back on, you get to 37, there's no path for Jacksonville to beat you. None of that is necessary if you just coach the game straight. Same thing applies to Dallas, by the way. There's probably a number. The way Dallas's defense is played and the way the offense is limited as far as their running game and stuff, if you get to 35 on Dallas, they can't beat you.
No.
So you don't need to. Now, against Washington, who knows? There will be games across the course of a season where you got to get in the 40s. You hate that happens, but it's going to happen a couple of times. It could happen. I don't think it'll happen against I don't think it'll happen down in Baltimore, partially because they run the ball so much just like the Eagles on the clock. But there might be a game where, with Washington, for example, where you're in a flat shootout and you need a bunch of points. But you can't coach every game like it's that. And his decisions, I'm sorry, horrible. Horrible. And it's not only that they didn't work, it was that he was making decisions he didn't need to make. Field goals and extra points are fine against bad teams. Nick Sirianni kept them from covering if you're a betting person. Nick Sirianni kept that game from being comfortable. The players played well enough. Not perfect, but the players played well enough for that game to be comfortable.